Welcome to this week's BitShares Dev Hangout. This recording is brought to you by the Beyond Bitcoin crew. We welcome all BitShares members to join us weekly and discuss the latest news, updates, and developments. If you'd like to participate in our next meeting, then please join us live on Mumble every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did you know the Beyond Bitcoin show now has a registered delegate? Please consider voting if you find our Hangouts and recordings useful. The delegate name to vote for is fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. Again, that's fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. The Beyond Bitcoin crew would like to send out a big thank you to everyone who's already voted and allowing us the opportunity to serve the BitShares ecosystem and our valued community members. So once again, welcome and please enjoy the show.
Welcome to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. It is currently Friday, March 20th. Today we chat with Dan Larimer from BitShares. As always, we will start with an introduction and we'll move to community questions. This is done for a reason. Cryptocurrencies like BitShares are designed to give the shareholders power in the ecosystem. So please keep this in mind when interacting with Bytemaster and anyone else. We each have a role to play here. My name is Fuzzy, and I will be moderating and asking questions of my own. So if you have a question, feel free to speak up or ask in the Mumble chat box so I can try to ask the question for you. With that said, Bytemaster, is there any way that people can get a hold of you that you'd like to throw out real quick?
Private message me on bitsharestalk.org.
All right, and would you like to get started with maybe telling us a little bit of what's going on?
All right, it's been a eventful past couple weeks. There's been a number of small bugs in the market engine and in the interest rate calculation for shorts. These issues are being worked on. We don't think there's anything terribly urgent or that will cause people to lose money from them. They could cause some disruption to the market in the sense that some orders might not get matched when you expect them to. We have Vikram working on those. A lot of these bugs have already been fixed. 0.7 release came out and it prevented new things from being created, but we still have to deal a little bit with stuff that was created prior to it. I think specifically canceling shorts that have obscenely high interest rates. So we're working on those issues. A overhaul of the market engine is already in the develop branch. It's going to be rolling out into DevShares. Vikram said that he had planned to do that today, but possibly Monday. So you can look forward to some significant bug fix releases in the course of the next week or so. So that's about all we have going on that front. Since we haven't had a Mumble session in a while, should brief you on what the general strategy is. We're going for robustness and performance and feature stability. We have several different initiatives moving forward. One of the things that we are looking at doing is adding WebSockets for the alternative RPC interface. Now that should significantly reduce the amount of polling that the UI has to do and help the UI stay synchronized with the backend. So that's one of the things that I've been working on. Then there's other things that we've been working on, like accelerating the cryptography. We had a bounty put out to use the new elliptic curve library that Bitcoin is using part of. The idea there is that CPU load, latency are a significant factor in the user experience, and we can accelerate a lot of operations by up to 20x by moving to this new library.
What kinds of operations?
Wallet scanning primarily. So whenever you unlock your wallet, it'll be a lot faster to get caught up. Valentine is looking at ways of enhancing the wallet web architecture to be easier to maintain and more resistant to bugs, I guess. Data being unsynchronized. So that's in part the other half of the WebSockets side of thing is getting the proper architecture there to make it more easily maintained with fewer bugs, fewer regressions. Testing our GUI has been one of the toughest things to check and make sure we haven't regressed at all. So he's working on those type of things. I think that's most of what we're doing. There's one other category of thing that I'm looking into, and that is enhancing the database architecture of the system. LevelDB, as we're using it today, is using a lot of memory and is giving us relatively poor performance for resyncing. These are two things that we want to rectify. So I believe we'll be able to achieve much, much better performance with much lower memory usage with the new architecture there. But that's a longer lead item focused primarily on robustness. If we're going to scale, we need to make sure that we can handle all these things smoothly.
Is there a place where, like, a transaction volume level that you see this becoming a problem at if you don't have it implemented by that, like, a certain point?
We'd have to have more transactions than Bitcoin has before the network won't be able to keep up. The user experience for full nodes will start to be a problem. It's almost a problem right now for anyone who doesn't have a modern machine. We should be able to handle, Bitcoin level transaction volumes today without significant change. But if we want to get where we want to go, and we want to improve the reliability, maintainability, and robustness of the code, we need to do some cleanup of our database architecture. So it's not fancy new features, but it's taking what we have and doing it well. So we have a solid foundation to move forward on, I think is what's necessary.
So it's really not a huge problem for a pretty good while.
Not when users have the option of having light wallets and hosted wallets. Delegates will be able to keep up, and they can maintain high-end machines if necessary with the current infrastructure. But no one likes a reindex that takes an hour when we're less than a year old. I guess on my machine, it only takes about 20, 25 minutes, but most people out there it takes longer. So we'd like to make it easier for people to stay in sync.
Sure. And syncing up, for those who are not sure what that means, is downloading the blockchain since the last time you've been on.
Right. So exchanges is another big area. They are a much different use case than the average user. They're up 24/7. They have a ton of transactions, and that really starts to slow down the wallet. So these types of things are just a sign of maturing from something that we rushed as fast as we could to get something that proved the concept out and into the market, and it's been working, and it's been working great. Now we're going to take the proven concept of bit assets and enhance the stability and reliability, performance with everything that we've learned. We've learned a lot as we've developed BitShares. Taking some time to breathe and get it right is where we're focused right now.
So speaking of learning a lot, I think this is actually kind of an interesting place where we can stop for a moment and kind of reflect on. We are a decentralized unit, a decentralized organization, community, company, any number of, apps. You can call it what you want to call it, but it generally will fit in some way, shape, or form what we're doing. With that said, over your time this past year, what have you learned in this process as far as not only just from a technical standpoint, but from a community standpoint and the investors' standpoints?
I have learned the importance of being flexible. I've learned the importance of being careful about what you say and when. I'd say those are some of the big things I've learned. I've also learned a lot of economics. I think that this whole thing has been a giant experiment, proving whether or not we can peg an asset. What we need to do with BitShares going forward is increase the market making activity. Probably the single biggest thing that needs to happen. And to that end, looking at advanced market making algorithms that can increase the liquidity with minimal risk to the provider. So there are already some people that are doing this on a small scale, but I think we've seen with things like Nubits and with things like Tether, the value of having a very liquid market making functionality. BitShares is unique among everything else out there in that it functions and maintains the peg without even requiring that. But for adoption purposes, I think that that is something that is necessary and that we need to find a way to make happen.
Well, this brings me back to the time early on in Bitcoin when there were people who were sending out emails to you, well, to me, rather, about bot programs that they had for arbitrage opportunities. And they would send you emails periodically saying how much you would have earned if you had it set to their regular settings or their default settings. And it's very interesting to see how these bots are being used to kind of maintain that liquidity in that peg. It is, for BitShares lovers, obviously it comes to as no surprise why we prefer BitShares over all these other ones. Like you said, BitShares doesn't need it for its primary function. This is just kind of like you're saying, like the training wheels, going back to that analogy, right?
It's all about liquidity.
Do you look at liquidity as more important on the internal or external market? Like on the internal market, it's about using our product, but the external market, I guess, it's more about entry and exit. Where would you like to see focus?
Internally is where I'd like to see it focused. Well, if you have a really solid internal market, then externally, first of all, I think all markets should be internal markets, and that as a general policy, we should encourage all existing exchanges to migrate to gateways for the sole purpose of not having large voting stake in the hands of a single entity that could be stolen.
So in terms of providing liquidity internally, we have, we do have sort of a printing press, as it were, for minting money that could be used to feed liquidity. Is that too much of a false market, or is that a good use of funds, do you feel?
I don't want to comment on anything that would involve changing the blockchain rules or a hard fork, particularly allocation issues.
I wasn't going that deep. It was more like let's say, we have delegates that spend money on marketing. We have delegates that spend money on, development. But you could have a delegate that just, feeds a market making program.
Right. So the thing with market making is if you want to play it safe and you're operating it for a profit, you're going to have wider spreads. If you're willing to tolerate higher risk and have some losses, then you can get narrower spreads. And you only have to subsidize the potential losses. You don't have to subsidize the entire amount of the market making activity. I don't think that we should depend upon anything that is not profit making long term, but it's kind of like giving out free samples. Hey, anyone who uses the market, we're giving away free samples in terms of lower spreads just to increase adoption. And that is ultimately probably better for the share price than the having the wider spreads. So assuming the losses are kept relatively small relative to the volume of liquidity that is being provided, then I think that there's a lot of potential to have a delegate do that to encourage smaller spreads and increase our perception on CoinMarketCap.
A couple concerns I have with such a thing is, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it, is one, if we have a delegate feeding funds into a bot, would it discourage others from creating market maker bots because it's hard to compete with a printing press, as it were. And also, because it's a market making bot, these funds aren't being burnt, so it's going to spool up liquidity and depth. But at some point, it's not going to be needed anymore. And what will we do? Like burn those funds, or what are your thoughts?
The person who's running the bot and is doing the subsidy, anyone who receives a subsidy is going to be able to outcompete those who don't have the subsidy at the market making process, unless the people who are that much more efficient that they can win on price even if they don't have a subsidy. So you're right. If we subsidize one market maker, we will potentially discourage natural market makers from entering the market. So the first thing I'd like to do is really focus on creating a profitable, robust market making bot that does not need any subsidy to operate. And if we have some of these bots in there providing liquidity, then we can see, well, what's the spread that the bot can actually maintain, and while making a profit, and how narrow can we get it? And then we can get an idea of whether or not we want to subsidize it.
Yeah, I've been running an internal bot on the BitUSD BTS pair for a long time, and it breaks even. But the issue I'm facing with profitability is that the swings in market price basically destroy spreads. So it's tricky.
I've been thinking about this using the same mechanic as a prediction market. If you attempt to configure your bot to maintain a 50-50 portfolio of USD to BTS at all times, and anytime it gets lopsided, it tries to rebalance, then your growth rate will be half the growth rate of BitShares, and your loss rate will be half the loss rate of BitShares on average. And as long as you're willing to accept that, now the volatility means that if you happen to be heavier on BTS while BTS is sliding, and then heavier on USD while BTS is rising, which is likely to be the case if people are selling into the bot, they can respond to information, whereas the bot is reacting. It does mean that you're likely to miss more of the upswings and get hurt by more of the downswings. But with a logarithmic back-off system, I think that it should be possible to have wide enough spreads to make up for everything. But if you're breaking even, that's really good. I'd like to get some feedback of people that have been running bots, what algorithms do work. Can you share how many thousands of dollars is your bot managing?
Not a lot. It's currently managing about $2,000 on the internal market. And when I'm experimenting with spreads, because the market doesn't move very quickly currently, the problem is if your spreads are too narrow, the bot starts to lose money. But if the spreads are too big, then you're never close enough to the top of an order book to move anything. So it's quick trick is to find the balance.
Okay. What spreads are you using right now?
Currently on the internal market, I'm using a 1.5% spread, top and bottom, which equals a 3.5 spread end to end. So it uses a market peg from external sources, Yahoo, some BTC38, the internal feeds, to determine the peg, and then it just puts up a bid ask at 1.5% off each, or off the peg.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to take credit for it, but this is the bot that I think Nathan and Nikolai and them developed, and I've just been tweaking it and working with it.
I'm looking at something that's a lot more advanced than that can safely handle more money, that knows how to back off with dynamic spreads. Because if you put more money into your bot and you create these gigantic walls, you really need to have multiple prices that back off as you increase the amount of liquidity you're providing.
Yeah, that is part of. I've added some parameters to the config.json file where you set up your spread, but then you also have your maximum order and minimum order, and then within the bot itself, what it does is it says, okay, if I put up my maximum order and I still have enough money left over that's greater than the minimum order, then I'll put it back up again but augment the spread by a certain amount. So you have the concept of a spread, but then also a spread delta as the orders go. So you get that nice sort of like stepped approach.
Yep, that's exactly the approach that's necessary. So I think we need more people doing what you're doing with more advanced tools. And the BitUSD market has been really good. So I've been really pleased with that.
One of the things that's fueling the BitUSD market is we have two complementary demands. We have some developers that have BitUSD looking to get out, and we have some that the mining company BitShares Mine looking to buy BitUSD and pay out BTC. But unfortunately, while some of it is on providing internal volume, a lot of that is going through an external bridge. Do you have any ideas on how to augment that, or is that just the way it's going to be? And I'm fine with it because it's making me money. So
Oh, it is. I mean, we're already trying to augment things with the mining operations. How is that going, by the way? Are we still attracting new miners, or have we hit peak miner and are not attracting anyone new?
If you're asking me, I don't know. I can only comment on the volume that I see going through, and I do see for a while there was an uptick in the number of buy requests for BitUSD. We have been in communication with the fellow that runs it. I haven't been directly. I think it was more Shentist and Monster who have been in contact with him, but he is looking for an increase of liquidity. He says he's doing about $5,000 a month in payouts, and is looking for that sort of liquidity at the bot. So to me, 5,000 BitUSD a month is okay for a pool starting, and he seems to be going in the right direction.
Could a pool owner have it so they could mine bit gold and bit silver on top of this?
Sure, it's no problem because what they're really doing is it's like a multi-pool, right? You mine whatever algorithm people want to point their servers at, and then you sell on the open market what you're mining and buy up the asset you want to pay out as. I
think that it'd be really nice if you guys could work with pool.minebitshares.com to mine Bitcoin, not mine it directly because the variance would be too high, but to mine it by mining another pool and then passing it on, the payouts from the other pool to the miners.
I think that's kind of what they're doing.
Can you currently mine Bitcoin?
I don't want to speak too much because I don't have any involvement in the BitShares mine pool.BitShares mine. So I know they're heavy in X11, which isn't Bitcoin. It's a alt proof of work coin. So I don't think they're mining Bitcoin directly.
Right. So the issue with the current system is that you've got that level of activity with the subsidy coming from me of about 20%. And that 20% is covering the losses you make in the market dealing with mining these altcoins that have low volume, high spreads. So when you combine the spread there with the spread from BTS and then the spread to BitUSD, it adds up to 10 to 15%. And then, the 5% premium is what's driving people to use this pool. But that's not a sustainable option. We want to maximize the revenue flowing into our ecosystem, which means we need to have people mining Bitcoin so that we can sell that Bitcoin with as narrow a spread as possible in order to buy the BitUSD.
Yeah, I think that it would be good to have a conversation with the folks that run it, and maybe we can I can negotiate a lower spread for them if they are mining BTC. Because currently, right now, my issue is getting BTC. The pair seems to be slanting towards heavy BTC, heavy BitUSD. Because people are selling BitUSD and buying BTC to cash out, I suppose. And that may be because of the share price, but I don't think so. I think it's just a natural way it's going to go.
All I can say is it's really nice to see the market well balanced on both sides of the price feed. All right, well, I think that's about all I have for today. I got to get back to what we're working on in the code. So just wanted to stop by and say hi to everyone. So someone asked about James Gong. Will he be doing any PR in the future? I believe the PR relationship is primarily one of reviewing things that we want to put out rather than a proactive role of figuring out what to say on their own. So it really is more of a filter and review process. I think that's what I understand.
That's a good segue into 3 questions that I posted under Fuzzy's heading for this morning's Mumble, and it relates to the PR. And those 3 questions are: who are the PR review board, and what is in place that gives the person that, or the entity that caused this whole PR fiasco to occur in the first place, what gives them the assurance that this won't happen again? Then the last question is, what issues were discussed in preparation for this morning's Mumble by the review board?
What the review board told me is that I could have a Mumble session, but I couldn't talk about certain things. I couldn't propose groundbreaking changes to the way BitShares works or new features or things like that. So I haven't said some things because we need to make sure that they are properly reviewed and presented in a more formal manner as we go forward. But so in general, I've been given guidance on what I can say and what I can't say. I'll probably get feedback on whether or not I did a good job today or not. So that's the extent to which we've talked. We did not make any proactive decisions about what to say today.
If you don't mind, I would like to ask, well, first off, Tom, do you feel like that answers your question?
It answers most of it, but it didn't fully answer the questions from the standpoint of what I posted in your Mumble session. Like I said, it's a matter of what gives this whatever. I don't know who this entity is that causes this disturbance in the first place. I'm not going to name them. I don't know who they are anyways. But whoever they are, what assurance did they have that this type of thing won't happen again? That's my biggest. I mean, we got to learn from our mistakes, and I'm not seeing any evidence that we're doing that. The evidence is the review board. That's good. I'm very, very affirmative on that change. That's a good thing. But I want to see the substance of that. I don't want to just hear the words. I want to see the substance of what's constituted by that.
The substance there is that big posts about what we're doing have been going through them. And for the most part, it causes, there's a reduction in communication. That's part of the substance. Because communication is more difficult, we avoid doing micro updates. So you're more likely to get macro updates. Some of the things that we've learned is to get things done and then announce rather than announce and promise and have things delayed forever and ever and ever. So, we've been making a push toward 1.0. It'd be better in the future to get everything done for 1.0 and then announce here it is, rather than having everyone hanging and upset because we broke promises. We're really trying to switch to the mode of under-promising and over-delivering.
That's the right direction for sure. I think the bottom line of my question, and I'm not alone in asking this, is just what's the nature of the review board and how is it going to conduct its business, and how will you and Stan interact with that review board? That's the essence of the question.
This is a place where I'm going to step in just for a moment, because we've been talking about this behind the scenes. I'm not sure the best way of going about doing it, but I'm kind of one of the people being tasked with thinking about how to go about doing it. One very important aspect of that was going to actually be after this hangout. We were going to talk about it. We can record it. I have no problems with recording it. This is, to me, like a historical thing, right? We're going to keep a record of all this stuff as we move forward and trudge through and learn and bang our heads into things that we don't see coming. But with that said, just to shorten it all up, after this hangout with Bytemaster is completely finished and over with, we can talk about it in depth, how we're going to go about deciding who's going to be on our review board. I do have ideas, though.
Okay, well that's a start. That's a good start. We need to get that information out there, because if you're going to say you're going to have a review board, but then don't describe it or describe who's on it, how it functions, then why did you bother telling us you're going to have a review board? Because there's no substance if that's all you do. So I'm glad to hear you say that, Fuzzy.
It's primarily right now the people who have stepped up and taken initiative to offer an opinion and to give us advice and to let us know when we're screwing up. It's kind of a self-selecting crew, and we're still trying to figure out the process, like Fuzzy said. But if you want to participate, it's the people who are proactive and choosing to be involved that get the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely something that we're going to have to reach consensus on. I understand that we're not all going to agree on it, but until we have like an algorithmic solution or something that's, I don't know if we can, but I know that delegated proof of stake is pretty dang close to an algorithmic solution to something like this. But unfortunately, we don't have some of those functionalities in because we're so young.
A lot of the issues that we're facing with regards to PR, external communications versus internal planning and that sort of thing are not any different from what larger companies, face where there's competition in the space, pharmaceuticals, that sort of thing. Has there been thought about reaching out to like a consulting firm or someone who specializes in this sort of thing to get their advice on a plan? Because it seems like this is not unique to us.
What is unique to us is that it's almost like a startup with a startup budget, but we're public and have all the issues that multi-billion-dollar companies have.
So you got the problems without the money.
Yes.
But we have some distinct advantages too. It just takes time and patience.
I would be opposed to an external PR firm at this stage of our development, because I think that our internal staff has a better handle, and the community, I should say, has a better handle of what's going on. And of course, you're going to have to ramp up this external agency, and they're going to be disconnected in the way that our internal community is not. So I'm kind of opposed to that suggestion. Riverhead, I mean, that's just my general.
I'm with you 100%. I wasn't clear. I wasn't proposing that we outsource PR. It would be more like a 2-hour conversation on best practices sort of thing, so that, we can get the opinion of someone who has, put this sort of stuff together for many companies, who's seen the mistakes and seen what works and what doesn't work, more of a conversation than an outsourcing.
Might be useful from the standpoint of once the review board is selected and some general procedures have been discussed, to vet that or to review that with an external consulting firm to get a check and balance on whether the perspective of that review board is operating the way they intend it to.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was proposing.
I think that you could probably get 2 or 3 really good books on the subject. That would be a lot cheaper than even a 2-hour conversation and a lot more information. So I think that whoever is on the review board should be required to read and discuss a set of books, and the community can propose books and even vote on books that they think would be the most authoritative books on the subject.
That's probably the more efficient way to go, indeed.
Yeah, works for me.
That way we can say every policy we have comes from some spot in some book, and we're following some policy or practice recommended by some book. That would be a more objective means of describing why we're choosing to do what we're doing, rather than just a bunch of guys going with their gut.
I agree 100%. And I think that's a good cost-effective way of accomplishing the same thing.
What are your thoughts on delegates taking those positions? It seems to me that the delegates are the ones who generally are going to need to know what's going on internally on a deep level anyway. They're also already in positions that require a large degree of trust, and they already have people with eagle eyes affixed on them to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to. Our community self-regulates pretty well. What do you guys think about that as some of the candidates having to be in positions like that.
When I suggested the whole review board process, that's one of the things that I made a suggestion for, was that pool of the PR review board would come from the pool of those people would come from delegates. Would be I think a great idea because of the reasons you just suggested there, Fuzzy.
I think that's a objective way of excluding people who might just want to get in and then leak information. That if anything that's discussed among the review session for the PR should not, under any circumstances, leak out to the wider market. And if it does leak out, then that's part of the delegates needing to police themselves. So I think a prerequisite to being privy to information prior to release is that you are a delegate, or at the very least you have a delegate that's being run on your behalf with a helper delegate. It could be a 3% delegate. It doesn't have to be a 100% paid delegate. At the very least, you should be approved of as a trusted member of the community that can get enough support from the stakeholders to be trusted with that responsibility. And that any private, sensitive information should be kept among the review board, who are a subset of the delegates.
I think that solves a couple of problems. One, it makes sure we have a reasonably trusted person, a collection of people on the review board, but it also addresses the issue that I feel the forum, and a lot of times even this forum to some degree, is a vocal minority. And if the PR is not in agreement with the larger community, they can be voted out without the person needing to sort of come out of lurker mode, or people who, the larger stakeholders.
That was kind of the way I was thinking, just because early on, we're not going to have like BitShares voting, but we do have delegates, and that has voting, stake voting. So, we do have something that can, at least for the time being, serve, as I see, as more like a patchwork solution. Maybe it will become something that will be viable in the long term, but at the very least, a patchwork solution.
I think it's absolutely the only way to filter it out. It's like a company. You don't have voting where everybody has equal say in who the board of directors of Apple is. The shareholders determine that. And then Apple has a subcommittee responsible for managing PR. It's the same thing. All authority flows from the delegates. If the delegate wants to hire a manager that's responsible for that aspect of it, fine. But it all flows down from the delegates.
Keep in mind also that with the voting, it's not a question of if, one delegate says something that people disagree with, they get fired. It could be, as an issue is presented, you can see one delegate's percentage starting to fall, and another delegate's percentage on the other side of the issue starting to rise, and that gives you a feeling for what the shareholders want without actually having to fire anyone.
That would be good for when the review board delegates are publicized who they are, and once the review board discusses the issues and decides what's going to be made public of them, that's publicized, and then you get that type of interaction. RH.
Yep, of course. Yep, I agree.
It could be like the Supreme Court, where you've got the majority and minority opinions.
Well, I think ultimately what we're talking about is only the public release of the information should necessarily be the official release. So if we start getting into, okay, well, this is what was discussed and talked about, and this is how we're going to handle it, as opposed, as voted on by the delegates, then aren't we just putting everything out there anyway, as a result of that, and ending up just showing the world that this is our democratic process, and this is how we came to this. I'm just putting this out there. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but something like having minutes to the board meeting, right? Like an organization would have that, their delegates would vote, and there'd be a record of who voted for what, and this would be the official way forward type of thing.
Well, there could be some minutes that are taken, but those minutes wouldn't be publicized. In my view, I think that the deliberations of that review board do need to be kept away from the public. But they could decide. Let's say there's 5 different choices or different things that are discussed about a particular issue, and only 3 of those choices are something that the review board agrees could be publicized. The other 2 might be too controversial to publicize. So you wouldn't want to disclose that whole discussion. You're going to formulate the approach that's going to be presented to the public, and that's what becomes the public discourse if there's choices to be made. But there could be situations where the review board has just issues and it's like 2 different choices and that's all there is, and it was decided by a majority that we're going to take choice A as opposed to choice B. But the internal deliberations I don't think should be made public, but should probably be recorded.
Well, that all makes sense, but the question is then, how do you know who was responsible for what, right? You're talking about watching delegates' votes, go down as they are approved or disapproved. But how do the shareholders know who this decision came from if it's all an internal meeting that everything is discussed, privately?
The issue is not the fact that you discuss or you consider things. It's the fact that while you are discussing and considering things, people don't know which way it's going to go, and that causes uncertainty. As long as the market always has certainty about which direction the blockchain is going, then you can reveal after the fact all the options and opinions that were expressed that led to the decision. But the decision is the decision, and it's no longer up for debate or discourse publicly. But I do think that if there are multiple options or courses, like if we're going to decide should we implement prediction markets or not, and we discuss it, we come up with official strategy, then we can make an announcement saying that this is what we've decided and this is why we've decided it and this is who reviewed it and what they said. I do think that having on the record the actual debate with the pros and cons on both sides and the resulting decision will silence a lot of people that question the decision. And they say, yes, I see that you guys thought through it. The points that I was going to bring up have already been addressed by the review board, so I can't add anything that's going to sway the opinion. But if you only reveal one side, it's going to seem like a dictatorship, and it's going to seem like arbitrary versus well-reasoned. If you need to know how you're going to replace management, so you need to know what each delegate's opinion was, how they tried to sway things, and how they ultimately voted after they voted. And if there's someone who starts swaying things in a way that people don't like, they can get voted out. But we cannot have it all deliberations be secret forever. I do think that if we're debating something that could affect the future of the blockchain, that it should be carefully weighed among people that can keep the sensitive information private until the decision has been made.
And there'll have to be some sort of system that's devised to ensure that the decisions that are made, get put into place and are the actual path forward from that point. Because, there's also the possibility that there's a widely unpopular decision that's come to by the current delegates that are, in office, so to speak, and a number of those delegates get voted out. And then, is there some sort of procedure for bringing this back up to a vote and going a different way? I mean, would that actually be the proper way to do things, since it's the shareholders are ultimately deciding which delegates to vote in at all times in order to voice their opinion as to what direction they want things to go. So I'm just, I guess what I'm saying is that there will have the bylaws of this organization will definitely have to be carefully thought through, so that, and made public ultimately, right? So that everyone knows and understands the process for this committee and the way that the procedural direct operations.
I'd like to wrap this up real quick with one final comment. Is that there's 2 things. PR is about managing our dialogue. It's not about changing the dialogue or changing what we do. So we have a process in place for deciding on changes. PR is how we communicate that process so that everyone knows where we are. if you know the process for getting a bill through Congress, then you don't freak out over every proposal because you know it'll never make it through the Senate or the president will veto it, or you know that there's a process in place that's only up for discussion and that it's not things. And then you know when it's been signed into law, you know that this is what's going on. There's no uncertainty unless it's a very ambiguous law. So as a general practice, we need to be completely open and transparent about our process. We need to manage PR in the sense of having an organized series of steps that things have to go through before they can be considered. If we're going to change something about the blockchain, then we should make sure that that change is clearly quantified, presented, reviewed, and at first stage is all the developers agree that it's a good idea. And then we figure out how to present it and make sure that all the marketers and business people think it's a good idea. And then we can put it up to the delegates in the community to vote on adoption of the idea. It needs to be a organized process so that people know what to expect, rather than, the developers decided to put out a release. I guess this is what we're going with. It should get to the point where the community can even start to direct which things we focus development on, based on which delegates they fund. But in the short term, there's a lot of reliance on people who live and breathe this stuff every single day for making decisions, and that's how it should be. But PR is the process, this is just my opinion, of managing how we communicate where we are, where we're going, and why we're doing it. It's not a process for deciding. We can have a process that's democratic, that involves everyone, and we need to develop and communicate that process. And that's probably the first thing PR needs to do, is develop and communicate the process and then make sure we stick to that process. And if we do that, then everyone will know what to expect, where we're going. They'll be able to discern the difference between a proposal and a change that's actually going to take effect. And nothing is going to be discussed until, at the very least, there's a large quorum of people in the know who agree with it before we even take it to the public. So I think that about summarizes what I have to say here. I'd like to keep these updates short and to the point, and probably in the future identify topics to be discussed here in advance rather than doing it off the cuff. Maybe take some questions, but it would be nice if the team could summarize some of the updates in a weekly status update that can be published, say, on Wednesdays, and then I can just answer any questions about it for 30 minutes. I think that would probably be more effective than me trying to figure out and remember everything that's going on just in time. It also gives it a chance for everything to be, the announcements or status updates to be reviewed. We need to work on that process, but I'm still here. Sure. I'm still, following the forum. I am still working to make BitShares the best it can be. So thank you all for everything you guys have been doing and for the great community that's made BitShares what it is. I think we still have the best technology, and we are going to change the world. So thank you, everyone.